Greetings, folks. So, part 7 of this epic. So, today we're looking at slot 7 and using these dichotomies. The only thing it has going for it is that it's default. And that's important. If the person, so for example, and Dario Nardi's research that the introvert does a lot of introverting activities overall, particularly basic ones, because they're in that default state of introverting. This slot is, so when I was talking about Model G, I would talk a lot about the role function, the role position. And this can improve a lot because of development. I think I mentioned last time, I sort of speculated on how societal expectations and social roles might lead to maybe some differences in development between male and female INTJ resemblers. And so what I can sort of say is like, say a different situation. So say we got a male or female INTJ single parent. That role is going to draw on SI. Well, there might be people out there, anyway, it depends how you define it, Ben, or certain facets or subfunctions of SI. And so let's look at those. And so, yeah, the contrarian alternative, I came up with that. And then I wanted to check it had been used elsewhere, and it's used in finance. But I've been listening to Peter Schiff since 2009, and he never used the term contrarian alternative. But it's like, it's like coming from the idea that the overall mindset of the NIT is introverted and irrational. Now, it's not what it looks like on the outside, but internally that could be the experience. So I've asked Hayley Harbour about this, and she has sort of developed this sort of like SI imaginative. No, something that she said interestingly, that she would think non-verbally, thinking not in words, whereas to me most of my thoughts are in words. So that could maybe go a little bit towards the irrationality. So it's very speculative, very speculative. Of course, you INTJ resemblers out there don't like to talk about it much. That internal state. So again, subjective instinctor. Yeah, and the reason why this function is not going to be used a lot in INTJ resemblers is that a large part of SI is stabilizing and that instinct to habit, routine, orthodoxy. So, and INTJs aren't being about being orthodox. So maybe sometimes over time they learn to, okay, let's just stabilize. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, rather than the rationalist attitude of trying to improve something. Now, they're not going to be like the NTPs, which will be like improving a system for improving the system's sake, or rather to make it more their system, to like to put their mark on it. Whereas always that filter there with INTJ of to improve it a lot according to a metric of actual utility. the improved efficiently, in that the improvement is worth it. It's like as a cost benefit analysis filter of the INTJ sort of running through in the background. So they're not going to be improving things for improving things' sake the way NTPs can. So Let's get the bar at the bottom. So these aspects of SI, there's other things you can see there. So again, stuff. So if you think of SI as essentially, it's. I mean, Van der Hoek nailed it. I could put it in the little quotes about the conservative farmer who takes care of his animals and does the same things in the same old ways. And it really was quite annoying that it appears that David Kersey Sr. never read Van der Hoek, even though it's mentioned 10 times in Gifts Different, that MBTI book that sold quite a bit. So it must have just been a hard book to get hold of. And then SI imaginative. So I sort of see it like this. Core of SI is the guardian instinct. What does Dario call his SI chapter in The Magic Diamond? Cautious protecting. That is getting towards the instinct of SI. Conserving instinct. Stability, stabilizing. And it's that stabilizing which is the opposite of NI. So here's a little bit of TI for you. So most people in the MBTI community will agree that NI is about development and that there's a temporal aspect to NI in terms of intuiting what is going to happen. And because we like these functions, the opposite functions to actually be opposite, then we can say development versus stability. And we can say on the whole type level, what do guardians do? They stabilize the situation and do things in the same old way. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. NI about development. NTJ is developing objects, projects. NFJs developing people. Counselor role, educator role, mentor role, cult leader role, if you want to get an unhealthy version. Now, what do they call it? The NFJ might say, I prefer community leader. I prefer influencer. And then, so the imaginative SI that you get in Jung that he banged on about with the artist. Now, usually, ISFP, they've got strong, unvalued SI, but it lines up with their temperament. You can get quite a few creative ISFJs, but they don't do it as a career because it's not safe. So you've got to look for hobbies and that. Harmonizing, that's the stuff with health, protecting. So you've got your main 3 features of SI in there. The stabilizing, like the guardian temperament stuff, the subjective sensing stuff that Carl Jung banged on about, and then the comfort sensing that Socionics bangs on about. Those 3 sort of like sub-functions, well, 2 of them sub-functions in the main part of SI. So all part of that instinct, subjective instinctor. Now we get on to this. So I've got to work out what to read. So I think that is related to, slot 8, the function in slot 8, right? That's for the next one. So we're looking at slot 5. So mainly it's this one. Right. Control. Right. Can synergize with dominance. Yes. So I did a video where basically so for the INTJ, the NIT, the introvert of intuitive type with subsidiary thinking can integrate all of the irrational functions into the dominant. Right. Okay. So this is going to focus on this. Functions in this column are the least valued. Function in slot 7, that's the one we're on today, is usually recognized by the type as a weakness that can be worked on, albeit reluctantly. Degree of reluctance varies by type, e.g. FE DOMs keener to work on TE than SE DOMs to work on NE. That's because the FE DOM might work on TE for FE reasons. So it's like, oh, right, we're at work. We've got to get our business head is on. Business heads, especially if ESFJ, it's the responsible thing to do. get into the TE mode. Whereas an FI Dom might be less likely to get its TI head on, unless there's a synergy there with the FI. Sometimes you can get that in philosophy. So, for example, on my channel, I've got a couple of INFP resemblers for you. So, FI and X. So, Hannah, Hannah R, because there's been another Hannah on the channel, the Finnish Hannah, and Monica, the Czech Monica, both studied philosophy. And so there you could say they use some role TI. But they're mainly sort of like their emphases in why they studied it seem to be more from an idealist point of view. They weren't studying like, say, Amanda, INTP resembler on the channel, like interested in Wittgenstein. Now she managed to convince me that Wittgenstein ISTP. Anyhow, for certain narrow uses, the merits of this function can be seen by the type, even though it runs counter to the dominant function. Right, that I would say. So got that in bold for a reason. For certain narrow uses, the merits of this function can be seen by the type, even though it runs counter to the dominant function. So INTJ being a negativist, being a bit of the critic, like Kerr Avon in Blake 7, we'll get around to him. They're going to see the value of stabilizer. So continuing on from there, but that counter can sometimes be a useful counterpoint to the excesses of the lead function. It represents the other side of the mindset of the type, e.g. the mindset of TI and X, INTP, is called balanced stable in humanitarian socionics, School of Humanitarian Socionics, is introverted and rational. TI and FI are both introverted rational functions, so by definition, only TI and FI DOMs can have the BS mindset. In my humble opinion, a type prefers to stay in its mindset and so switches to and fro between its valued and unvalued mindset function. Enneagram 6, then we'll switch between the author of this. Okay, that's more, we're here for NI and SI. So, INTJ is also a negativist, a critic, and so I can see the SI being useful in terms of, okay, let's just play it safe, stabilize the situation, go with what works, rather than the INTJ, again, because they are, like Kersey had the INTJ as predisposed to the arranger role, seeing how things can go wrong, contingency planning. So, and that lines up with Victor Galenka's idea of NI minus, minimizing the negative with NI for the I.L.I, the NIT. Right, so that's sort of explain that slot. And yes, it's a default row function. And then something about Dario. And then this is building on what he wrote in 8 Keys. Didn't write this, but it's consistent with it. Introverts are comfortable doing many introverted activities, and then Dario's got clearer in style as he's gone along. Like 8 Keys was written in 2005. It was sort of like a business audience, a bit jargony. So let's get back to there. Right, okay, so this is to show how normally the NIT is sort of against the guardian kind of SI instinct. So here, to the INTJ, order is never arbitrary, set in concrete, but can be improved. Thus, authority based on degrees, credentials, title, or celebrity does not impress them, nor do slogans or catchwords. You see there? Whereas the guardians are impressed by authority based on degrees and credentials and titles because they think this person is credentialed. It's like, and there's that bit of people like, so for example, Jonathan is going to be credentialed by Catherine Favre. and it's going to be like after about 5 years of study. So it's like, okay, that credential means something. It's not just paying your pass, unlike a lot of courses out there. NLP. I adopt ideas only if they're useful. That's the TE. So you can see that it goes. So their temperament is against, and also with the SE polar, the SE Achilles heel, they don't sort of go with sort of like the zeitgeist or what everyone else wants to do, or the way it should. They're the most anti of the NT is against, oh, you should do it like this. And they're the most likely to be like, what? Why should I? And don't want to do the opposite. So a bit here in that this goes against the SI that want their children to be independent of action and attitude, whereas SI would be more protective and want the children to sort of like do things the right way. So that's where it really is opposite, the NI with the SI, especially within the context of the rational temperament. So now let's go over, so Victor's definition of SI, this is going to go over, but look, there's a bit of instinct in there. Responsible for the practical need of bodily needs. Rest, nourishment, clothing, shelter. So bodily needs, we're getting towards instinct, towards self-preservation. So we can go through these. So this focuses on, like many socionics definitions, they are narrow. And this is like the comfort sensing subfunction of SI in my system. So let's have a look at the definition that they're using. So the SI minus works for ISFJ, treatment of a malady or resolution of everyday discomforts. Right, so like Cozy has ISFJ being good as a nurse, doctor, general practitioner. This one, adjusting to the environment to make yourself as comfortable as you can, make your territory autonomous, a little bit. So let's see what I think of these. Over time, I.L.Is work out specific routines and habits that help them stay comfortable and healthy. Right, so that's interesting. But he's got the routines and habits in there as part of SI, but maybe he only puts that in SI minus, because like that might be in there because like process type. There's a tendency to surround themselves with collections of favorite things and stock up on favorite food. Collections of favorite things, that gets a bit towards like the MBTI definition of SI. When going out of the house or on the trip, they take on certain minimalist supply of things to ensure they'll be comfortable traveling. Comfortable. That word will keep coming up. Try to keep things tidy and follow accepted practices of self-care. They don't. INTJ does not care about accepted practices. INTJ will do what it thinks is right. Hand washing sometimes give me away. However, they might get untidy when stressed, or when being tidy takes too much effort, or there's no like payoff to it. So there'll be tidy in pursuit of organization. They're not going to be uber tidy. But if it's a complete mess around them, that would impinge on their efficiency. So it's judging by the criterion of efficiency. Have a great appreciation for comfortable shoes. Maybe. Right, what else? Yeah, that's the one we're doing today. That's going to be the thumbnail. Is there anything else? Is that it? That's it. That is it. 19 minutes, that is it. There's not much I can add to that. Yeah. Let's go back to there. In general, again, because it's opposite, it's the contrarian to the dominant INTJ mindset. Now, let me speculate about which bits are going to be repressed more than others. I think this bit about like doing things in the same old way is going to be repressed a lot. I think that the imaginative side will increase because that's not going to be as repressed as much. I can see that improving, and I can see the harm. I can see the comfort sensing stuff improving in terms of INTJ doing the right amount of SI stuff, not going overboard. Yeah, but this assertive kind of like the core part of SI does run counter to the NI. But as I said again, they do want to minimize risk. So part of that will come in. So that's my overall thoughts on that function. I think that's it. That's it. Pretty short one today.